Year was 1877. The Wyoming plains, rolling across an endless stretch of untamed land. Moonlight cast jagged shadows over the Callaway Ranch, a grim monument of wealth and power carved out of the wilderness. Inside its walls, Evelyn McAllister stood frozen, her fists clenched at her sides as her father refused to meet her gaze. The flickering lantern light exaggerated the lines of his weathered face, but his silence cut deeper than any words. Silas Callaway sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding even in stillness. A man of iron and violence, he studied her with the cold detachment of a rancher inspecting livestock. "You'll marry my son," he said finally, his voice a slow grind of gravel. "That's not a request." Evie's breath hitched. The room felt smaller, suffocating. She turned to her father again, searching for even a glimmer of resistance, but his gaze remained locked on the rough wood of the table. "Papa, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Don't do this." Across from her, Jed Callaway leaned back in his chair, boots propped up against the table's edge. He smirked, dark eyes flickering with amusement as he poured himself another drink. The whiskey sloshed over his fingers, but he didn't seem to care. "Ain't so bad, sweetheart," he drawled. "You're pretty enough. I'll treat you real good." A chorus of chuckles rumbled from the men around the table. Jed's gang, outlaws draped in dust and sin, men who had never known law outside the gun at their hip. Evie's nails bit into her palms. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she had nowhere to go. Silas held the land, the water, the law itself in his grasp. He had bought the sheriff, threatened every neighbor who dared defy him, and now, with her family drowning in debt, he had bought her, too. She refused to cry. Silas pushed back his chair and stood, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the room. "You think you got a choice in this?" His boots thudded heavily against the floor as he rounded the table, stopping inches from her. "A woman alone out here? You wouldn't last a week." His voice was almost gentle, but his grip wasn't when he grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "You'll marry my son. You'll bear his children, and you'll be grateful." Evie wrenched free, her heart hammering. "I'll never be grateful," she spat. For the first time, something flickered in Silas's eyes. Amusement, admiration, even. "We'll see about that," he said. Night swallowed the ranch house whole, but Evie didn't sleep. The walls of her small room pressing around her, the scent of dust and old wood suffocating. In the distance, drunken laughter echoed from the barn where Jed and his men celebrated their victory. Her fingers trembled as she pulled on her boots. She had no weapons, no food, no clear plan, but she had her legs, and she had the cover of darkness. That would have to be enough. The back door groaned as she slipped outside. The air was sharp, thick with the promise of rain. She moved fast, keeping to the shadows, her breath shallow. If she could make it past the ridge, she could lose herself in the trees. Maybe reach Fort Laramie before they caught her. A gun cocked behind her. "Now, that ain't no way to start a marriage," Jed murmured. Evie turned slowly. He stood a few paces away, his revolver loose in his grip, his grin cruel and easy. Behind him, two of his men flanked him, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "You don't want a wife, Jed. You want something to break." His smirk widened. "Maybe, but Pa wants me to have you first." He grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward. She twisted, bringing her knee up hard. His breath exploded out in a curse as he doubled over. Evie ran. The shouts came fast, boots pounding behind her. She pushed harder, lungs burning. The distant trees her only hope. A shot rang out. A sharp sting tore across her arm, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Thunder rumbled overhead. The ridge loomed just ahead when another set of hands caught her, wrenching her back. The world spun, her body hitting the hard-packed dirt. Jed stood over her now, panting, furious. "You little—" "Enough." Silas's voice sliced through the night like a blade. He strode toward them, his face carved from stone, his eyes unreadable. Jed let go, stepping back, but his rage still simmered just beneath the skin. Silas crouched beside her. That was foolish. Evie spat blood and dirt, her chest heaving. So was thinking I'd just accept this. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. You've got fire. That's good. He glanced at Jed. My son could use a woman with a backbone. Jed scoffed. She's got too much of one, if you ask me. Silas's gaze darkened. I didn't ask. Jed hesitated, then looked away. Silas turned back to her. Tomorrow you'll be married. Fight all you want, girl, but this is happening. The first raindrop hit Evie's cheek, mixing with the blood and sweat already there. Silas straightened, adjusted his coat as the wind picked up. Take her back, he ordered. Jed grabbed her arm again, tighter this time. Evie didn't resist. Not yet. As they dragged her back to the house, lightning split the sky, illuminating the endless stretch of land ahead. For now it was a cage, but cages could be broken, and so could men. The morning sky was bruised with storm clouds, the scent of wet earth heavy in the air. Beneath the looming gray, the Callaway Ranch stirred awake, its inhabitants slow-moving, nursing whiskey hangovers from a night before. The storm had passed, but the weight of its warning still clung to the air. Inside the drafty chapel on the outskirts of the ranch, Evelyn McAllister stood at the altar, her wrists raw beneath the tight grip of Jed Calloway's fingers. Her pulse pounded so loudly in her ears, she barely registered the preacher's droning voice. The man's words blurred together, each syllable another nail, sealing her fate. Jed reeked of alcohol, his shirt half-buttoned, his grin too wide. His grip tightened. Ain't no use fight it now, sweetheart. Evie swallowed against the bile rising in her throat. This wasn't a wedding. It was a public execution of her freedom. The preacher's voice cut through the haze. If anyone objects to this union. Evie struck. Her elbow rammed into Jed's gut, hard and fast. He grunted, doubling over, and in the split second that followed, she grabbed the knife from his belt and drove it into the back of his hand. Jed roared, jerking away, blood spilling across the dusty floor. The chapel exploded into chaos. Evie didn't look back. She ran, the knife still slick in her grip, her boots kicking up dust as she barreled past startled onlookers. Men shouted behind her. Chairs scraped, doors banged open. The weight of pursuit crashed against her like a wave. She didn't stop. The world outside the chapel was blindingly bright, the sun breaking through the clouds as if bearing witness to her defiance. A gunshot cracked the air, wood splintered beside her as a bullet slammed into the doorframe. Her legs burned as she sprinted past the barns, past the workers who stopped mid-task, their gazes flickering between horror and admiration. She didn't wait for anyone to make up their minds. Jed's voice thundered behind her. Catch her! The land stretched open before her, vast and unforgiving. Her only chance was the tree line in the distance, a dense spread of pines at the base of the hills. If she could reach it, she might have a chance. Another gunshot. A sharp sting tore through the flesh of her arm, white-hot pain searing through her senses. She gasped but kept running. The sound of hooves pounded behind her. They were gaining. A fallen log loomed ahead. Evie leaped, clearing it just as a hand brushed the back of her dress. She landed hard, pain jolting up her legs, but she forced herself forward. The trees were close now. Branches whipped against her face as she plunged into shadows, the scent of pine and damp earth wrapping around her like a cloak. The underbrush slowed her, roots twisting beneath her boots. The horses wouldn't be able to follow her here. A grim kind of hope took hold. Then a voice, too close. You're dead, girl. Jed. She whirled just as he lunged, his bloodied hand reaching for her throat. She slashed out with a knife, but he caught her wrist, twisting until she cried out. The blade fell, landing uselessly in the dirt. I was going to be real nice to you, he sneered. His grip tightened. Now I ain't feeling so nice. Evie struggled, panic claw at her ribs. She refused to let it end like this. She drove her knee upward, aiming for his groin. Jed anticipated it. He caught her leg, shoving her back. She stumbled, hit the ground hard, gasping as pain rattled through her ribs. He loomed over her, panting. His lip curled. No more running. Then the arrow struck. Jed's body jerked, his breath hitching in a strangled sound. He staggered back, hands fumbling at the wooden shaft now buried deep in his shoulder. A second arrow hissed through the air, embedding itself in the ground between them. Jed swore, his eyes darting wildly. Evie barely dared to breathe. From the trees, a figure stepped forward. Tall, clad in leather and adorned with intricate beads and feathers, the man moved with a quiet, deadly grace. His dark gaze locked onto Jed, his expression unreadable. Another arrow was already knocked in his bow. A warrior. Jed cursed under his breath. Damn savage. The warrior's face didn't change, but his grip on the bow tightened. Evie forced herself upright. Her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps, her wounded arm screaming in pain. Jed was bleeding badly now, his expression twisting between rage and fear. He took a step back, then another. He knew he was outmatched. "This ain't over," he spat. Then he turned and stumbled away, vanishing into the trees. Silence settled over the woods. Evie's pulse was a frantic drumbeat in her ears. The warrior lowered his bow, but didn't move closer. He studied her, his face unreadable, his stance still wary. Evie swallowed hard. "Thank you," she managed. He said nothing. The wind stirred between them, rustling the leaves overhead. For the first time since she fled the Callaway Ranch, she wasn't running, wasn't fighting. But she wasn't safe, either. This man, this stranger, had saved her life, but she had no idea if he intended to let her keep it. She took a shaky breath. "Who are you?" A long silence stretched between them before he finally answered. "Dakota?" His voice was low, steady, a name with weight. He motioned toward her bleeding arm. Evie hesitated. Then, with a slow nod, she stepped forward. The trees swallowed them whole. The sky was thick with the scent of rain, the kind that came before a storm. Smoke curled from the fires of the Cheyenne village, where the quiet hum of evening work had begun to settle into stillness. Evie sat by one of the smaller fires, her wounded arm wrapped in soft buckskin, her body sore from days of travel, but her mind sharper than it had ever been. She watched Dakota on the other side of the fire, his features unreadable as he carved a small piece of wood with slow, deliberate strokes. She had learned much in the short time she had spent among his people. They had not spoken many words to one another, but in the silence, understanding had grown. He had not treated her as a captive, nor as an intruder. She was simply there, healing, learning. He had saved her once, but he owed her nothing more. Still, the weight of uncertainty pressed against her ribs. Jed was out there. So was Silas. Men like them didn't let their property go so easily. As if summoned by her thoughts, a distant cry cut through the night air. A warning. Dakota stiffened. Others in the village rose, eyes turning toward the ridgeline. The first flicker of torchlight appeared in the darkness, then another, moving like fireflies. Too many to count. They had come. Evie's stomach twisted. She had known they would come, but not so soon. Dakota was already moving, calling orders in his own tongue. Warriors readied bows. Women and children were ushered toward the trees. Evie stood, but the weight of helplessness nearly buckled her legs. This wasn't her fight. This wasn't her home. But it was because of her that the Callaways were here. A horn blasted in the distance. The first gunshot rang out. The village erupted into motion. Arrows cut through the air, meeting the gunfire with silent precision. Shadows darted between tents, warriors moving like ghosts, using the land as their ally. But the Callaways had numbers. Men on horseback charged, firing wildly. Silas's hired guns had come prepared. Evie ducked as a bullet split the post beside her. She had no weapon, no plan. Panic clawed at her throat. Across the battlefield, Dakota moved like a predator, his bow singing with each deadly strike. But even he could not stop them all. Then she saw him, Jed, weaving through the chaos, his wounded shoulders still stiff but his eyes alight with madness. He wasn't looking for battle. He was looking for her. She ran, not away, but toward the tents, where weapons had been left in the rush to defend the village. Her hands found the grip of a discarded rifle, the weight unfamiliar but solid. Jed spotted her. A slow grin curled across his bloodied lips. "Time to go home, sweetheart." Evie raised the rifle. Her hands shook, but she held firm. "Not with you." Jed's smirk didn't falter. He took a step closer. Come on now, Evie. You know how this ends. You ain't got the guts to pull that trigger. She wanted to believe he was wrong. Another step. The chaos around them faded. There was only Jed and the rifle and the choice she had spent her whole life running from. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Jed lunged. The shot rang out. For a second, she thought she had missed. Then Jed staggered. A hand pressed to his stomach, red spilling between his fingers. He looked at her, not with rage, but something close to disbelief. Then he fell. The breath tore from her lungs. But there was no time to feel it. Another figure loomed, this one larger, darker. Silas. His expression was unreadable, but the gun in his hand told her everything. She didn't have time to reload. Before Silas could fire, an arrow sliced through the air, embedding deep in his leg. He grunted, falling to one knee. Dakota appeared beside her, bow still raised, his eyes locked onto Silas like a wolf watching prey. Silas's gaze flickered between them, fury simmering beneath the surface. He knew he had lost. The village still stood. His men were dead or scattered, and his legacy, his son, lay bleeding in the dirt. He let out a slow, bitter laugh. You think you've won? Evie stepped forward, her voice steadier than she felt. I think I'm free. Silas met her eyes, and for the first time there was something like recognition there. Then he turned, limping away into the darkness. The battle was over. Morning came like a slow exhale, washing over the village in golden light. The dead had been buried, the wounded tended to. The Calloway threat had been severed, at least for now. Evie stood at the edge of the trees, watching the horizon. Dakota approached, his presence quiet, but she felt it all the same. You could stay, he said after a moment. She turned to him. He was offering her something without truly saying it. A place here, a chance to start over. But she already knew her answer. She smiled, small but sure. I need to find my own way. Dakota studied her, then nodded, not in approval, but in understanding. She had never belonged to Silas or to Jed, and though she had found safety here, she did not belong to this place either. She belonged to herself, and for the first time in her life, that was enough. She took one last look at the village, at the people who had saved her, at the man who had taught her what strength truly was. Then she turned toward the open road and walked into the rising sun.